Hello, I'm Seven from Fulcrum, and 15 years ago I read an old Discmark interview with the group Threesome about their nice idea to run a demo in reverse. So they would start with an end scroller that ran backwards, shade bobs that disappeared, and so on toward the title screen. And my first idea was, well, you couldn't do that with modern effects like fire or water or blur because those depend on the previous frame. And you can't fake it because doing a full pre-calc and then showing it in reverse would take infinite memory, and filling screens with noise and then trying to work forward would need infinite CPU power. And then I thought a little bit more, and then I made, this is something I made a week ago, that's reverse particles, but this is 4 kilobyte DOS intro. That was a reverse fire effect. This is a reverse motion blur effect, and the next is a reverse water effect. So you can do this. So if you think about why that should be impossible, that's because of entropy. You're losing information. And because of that, multiple input frames can have the same output frame. In the case of a fire effect, no matter what you start with, if you stop drawing it and keep applying the fire effect, you end up with a black screen. So going backwards, how do you know what was the input of your black screen? Well, you should know that because you know the intro or demo script, so you know which information to add to each frame. But that information gets combined with that of the previous frames in non-reversible ways. Now, the key insight is that information is not kept around forever. In the case of the fire effect, the flames you see are not from stuff you drew a minute ago. It's from like 5 seconds ago. So if you have an effect that loses information at a predictable rate, then you can say any information added now is lost after, for example, 300 frames, if we take 5 seconds at 60 frames per second. So if you want to calculate frame 900, then you can simply start with a black screen, add the information for frame 600, apply your effect, add the information for 601, and so go on until you have frame 900. And that needs only 2 full screen textures and only 300 times the CPU or GPU power. And for the next frame, you have to do that again. But of those 300 calculations, 299 overlap with the previous frame, so there's room for optimization. Because once you have one correct frame, the next one is very cheap. You can just apply your effect once. So if you already have 2 pre-calculated frames, say 999 and 998, then you show the first of those, and you calculate half a block of frames. Then you show your second pre-calculated frame, and you calculate the second half of the block plus 1 texture. So you have 2 valid textures with which you can repeat the procedure. So this needs only 150 times the CPU or GPU power and needs twice as much memory. And why stop there? Why not 4 frames or 8? So the logical end is to have 3 blocks of frames. You have the scratch block, which starts from a black screen and eventually results in 1 valid frame at the end. Then you have the build frame, the build block, which starts from the valid scratch frame and calculates all valid frames. And then you have the show block, which is an old build block, which is filled already. And we show frames from those, from that in reverse. So for every frame, we show 1 frame in reverse from the show block, and we calculate 1 frame from the build block and from the scratch block. So this needs only twice the CPU or GPU power, but it needs 900 textures. On a 2 gigabyte video card, if I have a single float texture, I only get 319 textures before the driver sets it won't play. So we need to optimize a bit. Now, from the scratch block, almost all the frames can be discarded. We only need the last frame. So you can just use 2 textures and ping pong between them. And if you look at the show and the build block, at the start of a block of frames, the build block is entirely filled, whereas a show block is entirely empty. And you gradually show frames from the build block, which can be discarded after that, and the show block is gradually filled. So you can these combine into a single block. The only catch is that you have to change the direction in which you fill and display things. First you have to go from left to right, and then the next block of frames you have to go from right to left. And you can use it with all kinds of effects that have short-lived state. So yeah, the fire, water, blur, motion blur, particle physics. I have some ideas for others, but I should test them first. You can't use it for effects that hold information forever. For example, Conway's Game of Life is not going to work. Birds, you know, flock motion accumulates information in the position of the birds, so you cannot reverse that. The same with inked on fluid dynamics. It's kept around for too long. I'm going to put slides and some example code at our website. It's not there yet. I should do it. Any questions? No?
I might have a question because I thought you were going to go. Okay, I thought you were going to go into a completely different direction. I'm not trying to understood this correctly because I started thinking about a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you are familiar with, for example, coded aperture imaging. Coded aperture imaging.
No.
Well, the interesting thing is that when you have a blur,
yes.
For example, typical lens blur can be reversed. Can't be reversed because information is lost. But if you design the blur in a certain way, the function becomes reversible.
Yes, that's possible.
So I thought that you could maybe use something like that for a fire effect by very carefully designing the weights and actually retaining information in it by sort of coding it into it. And
I don't know, because you still have the problem that whatever you use, eventually you get to a black screen. And how can you go in reverse?
You need very high precision. That's definitely a problem.
Yeah, unless you have like, if you have floating point colors and you put the color really below 0.1, that exactly. It looks like a black frame, but actually it still contains information, and maybe you could do that. Yes, that's possible. Other questions? If not, I'll show the particle effect that's like 1 week old. So it's not just full screen filter effects that can do this. Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm SvOlli. I want to introduce something as a sequel to a small bit that LFT did last year with his Poems for Bug. He introduced some digital raster paper where he's planning effects just with a pen and paper. Tjoppen ported this idea to VCS, where I'm coding on, and I, almost at the same time, try to do something similar, but not only for paper, but to have something like a mixture of a grid paper and some fridge magnets to plan my demo upon. So I'm going to show you just a simple demo effect that we're going to had it coded on Friday here in the VCS workshop, and I'm going to show you how to plan this easy effect with this tool. The tool is just for planning. It's really just the replacement for pen and paper. It does not create code. It does not analyze code. So let me show you. The whole thing about this is about copying data as the beam travels along. We need to have the play field as it is in use. The data must be written in there in the right time. So in the first part, we just load data from an array, store it in the data. And because this is also an operation that is on block that needs to be compact done in the same way, I'm also using something like a metadata, so saying I'm copying playfield, and this is taking, as you can see when you double click on 7, it has width of 7, so it takes 7 cycles. And you can change the color, something like there. We're going to use this a bit later on. So, and this is the playfield 0. This is the playfield 1. Duplicate, just as I'm lazy, but I don't want to create anything new. This is for playfield 1. So if you're would do the playfield 0 this instant, it would just work. Because at the time we've changed the data would be in there correct. But for the next time, for the next playfield, this would be for playfield, this would be for playfield 1. Let me just name them. Playfield 1. Playfield 2, playfield 0, playfield 1, and we're going to need some playfield duplicate again. And then we're going to see already on our drawing board that this wouldn't work because we are messing into the data as it's been done. So if we're going to do a bit of a delay, something like this one, and this one. And for symmetrical reasons, we're going to also use the delay for the playfield 0. Then it would work because the data will already be changed once it's done. So now we need to do something to fill in there. And let's create a new tile, name it, and this is just a jump to subroutine and followed by an RTS. This takes up to 12 clock cycles. So, and if I counted it correctly, so if you're going to do this, and this routine has been introduced as something that I called delay 12, because it delays 12 clock cycles, we're going to see, no, it's going to work. And for the last part, we can run stop the processor until we arrive at the next line. So that's what's going to be prepared in there. This command, it's just writing to one 0-page address, takes 3 cycles, and we've gone planned our example. This was the easy part. So this was just to demonstrate. But it really helps you to straighten out your mind if you're going to do something real complex, something like I did in my demo called Bang, which was shown yesterday. So this is something that I was rather at the end of the demo. And if you're going to, this was also planned with this tool. So I needed to, FlexiSprite I called it. So you check on, this is something like this. And I also did some notes in there that the code is, that this is not in the way that the code is executed line by line, but the jump starts in at the first wsync and then continues from the start at the beginning. I've got some notes that here's my comparison routine. When I'm going to exit the code, I'm going to be exiting at this point and stuff like. And it's really just, it helped. Without this tool, I couldn't have done this effect. And it just helped me straighten out on what I'm going to do. It's not going to, as I told, it's not generating any code or anything like that. It's just to get your mindset. And this tool will be made available as open source software once I get home. Any questions? So I overran all of you.
This is for the horizontal blank. Do you have also some system for the? Do you also have some system for the vertical blank?
What I can do is it's just as usually the line the image gets drawn line by line on the system that I use.
Okay, yeah.
So and if you're going to do something vertical, of course it's just fridge. If you're going to see here, if you change the width and height so that it gets higher than the text can be displayed in width, so it gets turned by 90 degrees so that you can do, as you can see here, everything also just pointing that the text goes down. So, there's another question. Fine.
Can you configure the size of the grid?
Yes. Cool. Yes, you've got some. At least you can in the source code. I was pretty sure that I had some I code on Linux. I just wanted to show that it also works on Windows. And usually I have something like some setup where you could say the size of the grid. But no, I took this out because this is already the smallest that is possible because of the font that is displayed. You see that it is already really tiny. And if you want a larger grid, the source code will be available, and it's a simple Qt application. And Qt is something that you can get very easy into for coding. No. There was a question in the first row. I think I should be announcing the tool with the link where to get it. It should be available on GitHub, something like this. I will use this one as a second repository beside my own, and I will drop some lines on Pouët on how to get it. Okay. Thank you.
Visible? Looks good. Yeah, I just forgot. Can you tell the nerd? Yes. So, ready whenever. Okay. Hi, my name is Gargaj. I'm the current admin of Pouët, and this is going to be a little shot-in for the talk about how the code sucked for the last 5 years. I'm really happy that all of these amount of people are interested in laughing at someone else's work. This is sort of the sanitized version of the title. The original was kind of, just a second. The original was kind of more buoyant. What I'm not going to talk about, just to get those out of the way, I'm not going to talk about the current code base. I'm not going to talk about the people who made that current code base. If they feel offended, that's kind of a side effect to that. I'm not going to slam PHP, because if you feel like I should slam PHP, then you have your own problems. And basically, I'm just going to go about like how, if you know the website, the Daily WTF, this is pretty much going to be that, in case that ends up here. Hi. So let's go a bit of a historical context. The website started in 2000, July, and what was available at that time was PHP 3 and MySQL 3, so it was way back. There was no real sort of idea of how to code PHP back then, although some might argue that there's none now. Just for the record, Netscape still existed at the time, if that kind of scares you or puts you in a context. So what does this basically result in? a PHP code written in 2000 means there's no refactoring, there's no caching involved, no, code commenting or anything. I mean, you got to realize that this was planned as a much smaller site. No one realized that the demo scene was so productive, and that essentially the whole idea about Facebook and all these kind of places, Last.fm and SoundCloud, would basically go the way Pouët was already at. So all of a sudden there was a surge and the site couldn't take it anymore. So I can kind of see why it was like that. I cannot forgive why it stayed like that. So that's why I'm going to make fun of it. Just a couple of ideas. If that says anything to you, register globals is implied on, which means that this got that reaction. Holy crap, there's going to be fainting people here. Anyway. This basically means that all the parameters you get from GET and POST requests, HTTP requests, are immediately loaded in as variables. So if you don't initialize them, you could basically inject code. There's also, which I don't remember, the magic quotes was also sort of implied on. So basically, this is like the two satans of PHP. Stop it, come on, I'm not even finished yet. So. And of course, there's also like the whole if and if kind of instead of braces. This is something we could argue on, but holy shit, it looks crap. Now, basically, the next thing was, holy crap, we all loved like table layout. This is a screenshot of basically I sort of restored the old version that's on GitHub right now and made it run. Each of those levels is a table. So at the bottom right, you can see that sort of like the download link is actually 7 levels nested, which makes really easily maintainable sort of layout. The great thing about it is, of course, that nothing is refactored, so there's no such thing as table class or anything. There was no classes in the first place, what am I talking about? But I think it's like 6 or 7, I don't know, you can count if you want, but you probably don't want to. And of course, basically, yeah, let's just jump right in. You can actually check the code. It's open source. You probably know why. I don't want to go into details why it's open source. I had this seminar idea way before the whole open source thing happened, so this kind of ruins the fun, but that's the commit ID, like SHA, if you want to actually sort of compare what I'm saying. I'm going to be putting links on the slides as well. So let's start. Database. The database started very small, but sort of grew out. When I got the site, it was about 40, 50 tables. And there's a couple of fun parts about it. First off, that the tables are absolutely massive. Like, sort of, basically, you can see that, like, now this is the wait. Oh, this is the user settings table, which is like if you visit Pouët, you can configure like what's on the front page and everything. Yes, this used to be in the users table, which is an additional like 50 columns. So it used to be like 70 together. So this was one of the first things I did, is like split it off. So just for my own sanity, because like just managing the whole table was insane. Of course, that sort of implies that. Sorry, where's my mouse? That sort of implies that like none of the columns are normalized in any way, shape, or form. That's why you can only have like 3 groups per product. Which, by the way, I don't have a problem with that because it's really easier to load. Like on the front page, you want to query several sort of products, then you can just do 3 left joins. It looks really ugly, but it works much faster. So I think that was kind of a happy accident, I guess, although happy is debatable. But another fun part about it is that the columns are what I call the FIFO order. Basically, you can see if you look there. The first is the ID, obviously, and then you have sex columns of random stuff. Then you have which party year was it released at and which place it got. Then the party itself is somewhere down the line, and then the competition is like 13 columns later. This is even more fun. The group is 11 columns down, and then there's 12 columns of space for the third one. So basically, it's FIFO, meaning first in, fuck off. So these were never reordered, and I think one of the reasons was that one of the early MySQL bindings to PHP had like numeric sort of column IDs instead of names. So if I reorder them, it probably breaks. Slangpunk still has this problem, by the way. Another thing is that there's this wonderful mess about column names, is that the date, like there's a prods have a date and the quan, which is when in French. By the way, it's great to learn French. one of them is the release date, and one of them is when the prod was added, and I don't know which is which. I usually have to you do a select limit one and you just see which one is it, because the first product is like Astro Bros, so it was added in 2000 but released in 95, so I can like sort of guess. And also, the columns are sort of like sometimes in French or like Cluedo English, so you can see like who, which, when, and like absolutely unusable, and or in French. The lucky thing is that there are comments, like you can have comments in the MySQL for each column, but they are also French, so it doesn't help much. And one of my favorite parts, and this is PS is doing, I know this for a fact, that it's really stingy for columns sometimes, which means that there's a field for the invitation, like which party is this an invitation for. Except it only works if the type is not BBS true, because then it's the BBS number. So it's one field for like two distinct functionalities, and it's like seppuku worthy, basically. Half the database still doesn't have any indices. So there's also like stuff like the parties AKA table, which I still don't know what that was supposed to be. Like, I don't know. And then, of course, there's also the data fun, which is the data is actually stored, escaped in the database because of the magic quote. So basically, you know that back then in the whole PHP time, there was this idea that like, if it doesn't insert properly, just add more slashes. And that kind of worked. And also because French is a Latin 1 language, so they don't need Unicode. So they got basically everything in Latin 1. So once you start posting like Hungarian accents or like Japanese, Russian, Greek, whatever, then you get HTML entities. So if you remember the switch between 2.0 and then 0.9, there was a 2-hour sort of break because I had to actually manually go through well, not manually, but write a script that actually goes through every single line because there's no MySQL function to actually like unescape entities. No, the other fun part is the file system, which is, NFO screenshots. This was also not designed to have more than 100 prods, I guess, which was sort of naive in a way, because every single one of them is sort of still in single directories, which means all the screenshots, like 60,000 prods now in one directory, the file system is going to go bonkers. I still haven't fixed that, but I really want to. And there was also a fun part where there was no file name validation, so there was a lot of people who tried and succeeded uploading PHP files as avatars. Luckily, I knew them, and kind of like basically, I had a flame war with Analog about this when I was not an admin, and then when I became an admin, the first thing I saw was this, and I was like validated 3 years later, but I didn't want to be. Now, okay, now for the heuristic part, let's see the code. First off, copy paste rules. This is I noticed. There was nothing refactors, no wrappers. And for the first thing, what that means is that PHP, as a language of evolution, often deprecates shit. So the problem is that once they deprecate something, then half of the code has to be sort of like search and replaced or something like that. Here's the first one part. This is a massive switch case, which does the ordinal indicator, which in English, first is ST, second is ND. As you can see, it's basically this massive switch case. This appears 10 indistinct places in the code. I mean, I'm not even complaining about being in a switch case, but like every time I had to change something, I had to go through and search. It does appear in 10 different places. You can go in on GitHub and check it. The next thing was the user PHP, which basically was also PS is doing, is that user PHP is basically what you accomplished on the site, and it's also the views of showing all your comments, showing the prods you added, all of that stuff. Instead of parameterizing it in query string, he just copied the site, copied the file into 3 different ones. So once I found the security hole, I was pretty sure the security hole was in the other 2 one as well, because it was the same code except with like 1 line of difference in it. And that was kind of nutty in a way, but it's not as bad as the submit PHP collection, which is about 35, 40 different files, each of them doing different things. Like if you want to add like a slangpung ID to a party, that was a different file for that. And all of them had like the old table layout and everything. So I think it ended up with like a megabyte or 2 of raw source, in like 100 files or something. So. The fun part is also that the authentication was super redundant. So every time, everywhere you want to check something, you have to do the same sort of boilerplate crap. Or they didn't have to do it, but they did it, but I had to take care of it once they left, so it's kind of like, you understand the problem. Oh, and this is just the submit, not the remove. And then my other favorite is magic numbers. Now, I love magic numbers. Demo coding is all about magic numbers because 3 looks better than 4. You know, these kind of things happen. But I like it when it's commented and like defined, and there are ways to create constants. Not here. Basically, you already met this one. If you want to make sure that your product doesn't have a party next to it, it has to be 1024, because 1024 and fuck you. I don't know. But why 1024? I mean, there's a couple of ways to do that. Like, right, you can have 0, you can have null. Those are 2 distinct things in both PHP and MySQL. Or -1, I don't know. Why 1024? Because, I mean, the ID would increment, okay? So I think, I don't know how I think he actually added a dummy party for that. Which the same thing would happen with the Slangpunk stuff, where it was 12 for some reason. Because Slangpunk had this thing where there was a no party stuff, where pictures were just added from people's weddings and stuff like that. So there were a couple of like no party years, and 12 was one of them. So like, have fun. There's also the special ranking stuff, which is like 95, 98, 99. You know this one when you're submitting prods, you had to like, if it was disqualified, it had to be 95, 97. That's also fine, probably not the best choice of numbers. I mean, we're not going to see a demo competition with like 99 entries anytime soon, but the idea was like, when you were adding stuff, these were not changed in the selection box, so you had like this little legend next to it where you had to be like, okay, if it was disqualified, then I have to select 97 instead of like, 98 disqualified. That's kind of like very, very fun little user experience. And of course, my absolute favorite, the fake PS. This needs a bit of an explanation. It's the same thing I mentioned earlier, the user settings, where you actually where you had this sort of setting where you can set up how many comments do you want to see on the front page, how many of this, and when you see. There was no default setting for it. The way it was done is you can see that if I already hear like the sort of moaning here. Basically, it calls your sort of settings, and if they don't exist, it just falls back to this specific user. Now. So he just created a new user, set it up the way he liked it, and just falls back to that. And it's actually called fake PS. So there's a couple of also like, I mean, this was absolutely my favorite, but also a couple of random WTFs is that the naming is complete bonkers. BBS is actually the forum, but the boards are called BBS, and the NFOs for BBS is called the other info, which also doesn't make any sense, and they were completely messed up, and it always it's like the tables were also just BBS, 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 and there was like BBS comments, but also like BBS affiliations, so it was a complete chaos. There was also the groups versus parties, where the groups PHP shows the group or the list of groups, but for parties, there's parties which lists, and party that sort of views that one entry, so that's also kind of confusing. And then the download PHP actually listed mirrors. So I mean, there was a lot of fun to be had with that. And that's about it I wanted to say. So thank you and sorry for using that site. No questions. I don't answer questions about Pouët.
Going to be okay. Yes. Yep. The resolution hasn't screwed up. That's good. Right.
And our notes.
Yep.
We are slightly less prepared than we wanted to be.
Yeah. I had a concert to prepare, so yeah.
So we don't actually have slides or anything. But we're going to talk a little bit about how things have gone since we launched the Demozoo in December, and mostly about how things are going to go in the future. I'm gonna pick this up.
Yep.
We're gonna talk a little bit about numbers. Since we launched, at launch we had 50 users, including beta users. Since we launched, that number now grown to 563 that are registered to change things on the site, because you have to have an account to change things. We have, as of this morning, a little over 4,000 unique visitors in 4 months. So that's not bad. We have had about 10,000 more credits added since we launched. And the download link numbering has increased from 92,000 to 110,000 valid download links.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's just seen lots of growth while we're there. It had lots of new data in there. Obviously, we launched with all of the party data that we could find on scene.org on there, and it's grown from there. But it's not just about sort of getting the data just for hoarding it all. What we really need to think about now is how we can really use that data to serve the scene, to give something back. And we've already started doing things like that. The credits feature on Pouët, that was kick-started from the data that we already had. We sort of put together a quick API to sort of export our sort of credits information for Pouët. And more recently, when the Demo Clubby in Helsinki, they have monthly demo shows, and we've sort of helped out with that, compiling the sort of the playlists there. We have a monthly export of the prods that have come out in the last month, and that sort of goes into their massive spreadsheet. And so we did promise sort of more general API. That's still in the works, but in the meantime, if anyone has any interesting ideas of what to do with the Pouët data, then the Demozoo data, then talk to us, and we can certainly look at putting together these ad hoc APIs for like these single purposes.
Yes, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our start page.
Yep.
Could you put it up?
Yep.
This is what it looks like currently, and pretty much what it has looked like since launch. We've been talking a lot lately about how we can make it better. Basically, surfacing more information and more places to go. Yep. We've kicked around some design ideas. I think I have one. Which isn't much better, but but basically, we want to try to create a front page that invites more interaction.
Yeah, I think one challenge we've really got is to sort of walk the balance between catering for what existing demo sceners want to get out of the site and what newcomers would want to see. And so at the moment, it's kind of made it graphically interesting, but if there was someone came in just from the cold and having no idea what the demo scene was, then this doesn't really help much. What we really want is something like a sort of, hi, we're the demo scene. This is what we're all about. So it's one thing that we really want to get done very soon is sort of intro to the scene thing, and being able to highlight things that are sort of worthwhile, worth seeing on the scene.
Yeah, so that we're more of a portal for new and old people, somewhere you can point people. At the moment, we're not much more, not much less hardcore than Pouët. You sort of have to know what the hell this is to know where to go.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're trying to do here is stick to the principle of making things editorial on the front page. I think that there's certain things you can only go so far with like sort of automatic pulling out the latest releases. And I think an example of that is you might have seen last week there was this release on the Atari 8-bit. It's a Mona Lisa 256-byte intro, and that's the sort of thing that that is sort of more. It's widely interesting for the wider scene. We should be showing that to people, getting it out there. But as it is on the sites as they stand at the moment, we're just going to. That might be sort of top of the month for a week or two, and then it's going to get buried by the revision releases. So what we really want to do is being able to highlight those sorts of things so that they don't sort of get buried in the sort of influx of new releases. So one thing we hope to do is make more use of the news feed and make it, and also we need to improve the workflow for us so that we can get these news stories up quickly, make them look attractive, and sort of highlight them in the main stage if we can.
Yeah, and with an editorial approach, it's easier to get a balanced. How to put that? To get a balanced set of news that highlights important things.
Yeah.
Because if something happens just before revision, and there's an automatic system, it's going to get buried in revision news.
Yeah. So with the process of working out what to do with this, it's sort of ongoing with us. As revision is always a good place for these sorts of discussions when you're not sort of too busy on other stuff and enjoying combos and things. But we're looking at shrinking the main bit down a bit, and then the discussions just go to the side so that we can have so that the news is more visible. And there's all sorts we can do here and do a lot more like testing of figuring out exactly what proportion of our visitors are logged in users and what proportion are the newcomers. So it's there's lots of work to be done there.
Yeah, well, if anyone has ideas or would like to help out with design things, neither me nor Matt are particularly good designers.
Yeah.
So we're open to help.
Yeah. So and the work is continually going on, even though it might not we might not have seen many sort of very visible improvements. It's all been sort of going on in the background. You can follow the progress if you. It's all on in the open on GitHub, github.com/demozoo. There's been a few sort of nice features that have landed just recently. We've improved the tagging stuff so that. Example. Hopefully, you've still got internet here. Let's see. So, no, I think it's going to go slow. No, okay. Hazards of live demos, but the tagging has got like descriptions against each one. So, there we go. So, no screenshots, but so we can sort of mouse over these. Have we got one for?
This should be, but I think it's just loading.
Okay, right.
Or is it? Well, basically, if you mouse over them, if you're a newcomer and you see a lot of really cool intros, and they're all tagged Crinkler, but you have no idea what that is, if you mouse over it, it will tell you what Crinkler is. It will give you a link to click to download the application.
Yeah. So we've got
these. So it's more useful meta information.
Yep. So it's just little sort of usability things and helping newcomers to navigate the site a lot more. And there's other stuff we're sort of hoping to get done real soon is a better viewing of screenshots, being able to like zoom them, the graphics compose style, and sort of flip between them, browsing through them as a gallery. So large and small things, visible, not so visible, the work goes on.
And the tags can really be anything, not just tools used in the production. It can be the type of music for music entries. It could be, really anything. So that's it for now. Questions? Then we're done.
and it's 100% self-made. Yeah, so this was sent by the Dnepr rocket. This was a former nuclear rocket of the Russians, which is now used to send up stuff to space. This is video how this looks like. Maybe while I'm talking, because the PowerPoint cannot play this. So this was used to carry 4 nuclear rockets to America, but actually now it's carrying scientific stuff into orbit. So, and yes, how it is related to the demos. And I must start again the voice. So, to introduce the small satellites, the first ones have been introduced by Professor Twiggs in USA. They got a size of 10 times 10 times 10 centimeters and a mass of 1 kilogram. But the launch costs are still 50,000 euros. Okay, a big satellite costs 20 million or more. So this is possible by sending them piggyback on a big rocket as a secondary payload. But no pyros are available, so it's just kind of electronics inside. But now there is another geometry, so you can send for a cost of 15,000 euros a satellite into orbit of about 5 centimeters per edge square. So, and in the 60s, there have been a probe which used plasma thrusters. So this is solid fuel like Teflon, and it's burned by a plasma spark. So, and you can buy it for satellites, actually. This costs 15,000 euros. Self-made, I made it for mine. This was about 15 euros. Okay, it was 3 revisions of the board, but it's in vacuum, it's worked fine. So here you can see the test at university in the high vacuum chamber, and it's running. This thing has 8 plasma thrusters on one PCB, and you can see the cone of plasma coming around there, and this can run for hours actually. So I don't know what velocity you can get, but you could change the orbit or the attitude of the satellite. I guess here you can see the plasma cone coming out. So for the camera, it's the same. If you want to buy one, there are commercial ones, 12,000. Self-made was about 10 euros. Watterod electronic, when you know it, you can get this camera for 8 euros. The other stuff also. So there was also an optical navigation algorithm on board. It could find out the center of the Earth. So this is a circle function. It could determine of this picture and sun position. Algorithm was about 100 lines of code or so. So it's actually simple. Then, oh yeah, in space you need to turn the satellite around. So you need some change the momentum to the axis of a motor. So you can, without propulsion, you can rotate this thing and show it in any direction you need in space. Also 15 euros. Then thermal checks. The problem is to launch this, you need to get through all the paper war like the big satellites. So this is actually very hard to achieve, but to build it was not so far. Okay, we had time pressure because this new geometry was actually introduced, and I started to build it, made the contract, we got an investor. But okay, here's this sun simulator. The first solar cells have just burned out. They were very cheap ones. The expensive ones are too expensive, so we had to use some cheap ones. So our first burned up completely. Here, a shaker box, because the vibration has to be tested and approved, else it cannot fly. So it's actually a very hard work. So there was an integration procedure, and you can see here the secondary payloads, the satellites, and this one on the right side in the corner, this one deployed ours. So here's the Russian team for the rocket. This was the warhead, former warhead. So we had also some funky patches made. And yes, now comes the demo-related part. There was a demo for the Commodore 64 on board, and it could be downloaded from space. So this demo will be shown at 5. Oh, actually, I hope I can do it in the last minutes. Here also some nice artwork. Here also the pilot has a badge on his arm. So for next 20 years, it will be in space. The cool thing is, I built now a very small one. Here's the board. This is actually the main board. This is the complete satellite. And there will be, I got here some more material because it's not the complete one. Because for the thermal cycles, you need some, so here's some part of aluminum. This will be put on the one side, this on the other. And the solar cells are actually these ones. They can withstand very high temperatures. They will be put here inside. And then with some screws, it's put here. Here are some sliders, so you can put this board. This will be given open hardware and open source, or you can buy it completely like it is. I will introduce it on the homepage later. And then this part, you can just put it here inside. And then here is a JTAG and some framework code, so you can use it. So what you need to actually receive it? Digital video stick. You can hack cell phones with it if you want, but you can also get the stuff from space. It will be 1 watt of power, but the antenna is very small. So actually, you can get even with 100 milliwatts, you can get it down when you don't have in the spectrum of very wide spectrum. So the trick is to send something to the spectrum which is very narrow bandwidth. Then you can get it with a very easy antenna. Can build it for. So here's a spectrum. Actually, I could demonstrate it when there is time with a radio, but you can write also pictures into spectrum. So here, for example, will be the compass. So it shows you the attitude towards Earth from a satellite with a picture. And the cool thing is you don't need a decoder because this is just a spectrum. So NSA, NATO, and even the aliens will see this picture when it comes. So without decoder. And we want to also, for Demosthenes especially, the satellite will be sent up for fun. Every one of you can have a 16 × 16 pixels logo and send it up. So and for 10 euros, you can build an antenna like this. Need some pipes from hardware store, some wire, some special wire on eBay. So for 10 euros, you can get it and you can receive it. And depending on the orbit, it will be seen every day 2 times from every point on Earth, because it's flying polar orbit and the Earth is rotating around it. So then you can get it. And more info will be on, okay, I haven't written it here. So it will be on PocketCube.de and related to a GRSI project. So yeah, that's all for now. If you've got questions, you can answer it. And the launch would be probably beginning next year, maybe if we are lucky this year. So financing, because this thing is so small, I got a good price of 8,000 euros. We're going to earn it somehow by crowdfunding maybe. So we'll offer for the logos, but it's not for buying a logo, but for contributing to the project. To make it also open source. The boards can get there for self-price, maybe 20 euros or so. And yeah, the software framework. It's an experiment for the beginning if this can be done. So we can put the Demosthenes logos up into space and they will stay there also for many years, will be sent down. It's also as entry for amateur radio. And it's a hell of fun to do this. This is also a very exciting hobby. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it.